we'll see. We like to meander. I mean, usually our phone calls kind of turn into, like hours of you call to tell me one thing, and then 2 hours later we maybe get to it. So
Dude, I had to stop calling you. It was becoming problematic. Like I wasn't getting anything done. No, I'm just kidding. And it's not you, bro. It's me. Um. All right. So, shall we start in
yeah, let's
earnest?
do it.
All right. You see us? Are we up?
I still don't see us, but oh, there we are. I see us
Bing.
now. Perfect.
We were probably going the whole time. This will be a whole nother episode of us like guessing for a while. But I'm gonna pretend like it didn't work first and then it worked later. There's not all that nonsense.
It's all good.
Um, anyways, thank you guys. Those of you joining live, those of you watching later, whenever that day is, thank
Yep.
you for doing so. We're super. I don't know. I like doing these. I think it's fun for
Yeah.
me to now
Yep.
have a space where I can just like talk about all this stuff I've been writing and dwelling on and thinking about. And
Yeah.
I'm realizing too, it's actually helped me quite a bit to realize just how much I've worked through, but like I feel like I'm just constantly editing, retooling, developing, writing, and it has certainly um this has been a really great tool even to like help me zero in, focus, and say, uh, okay, I've got to define this. Like I can't keep right. It's the same thing. Maybe it's an art thing. Maybe it's the artist in me. But it's like, you have to know when to step away because you'll just overwork it to the point where, and I'll just keep going. Like there'll always be something I feel like I can tweak or
I
adjust.
have I'm a terrible victim of that because my space is limited, and like my creative space is this space where I also work during the day. So like when
Yes.
I shift gears, my time has to include cleaning up. And so like if I continue to overwork things, then I end up in a situation where like then I have to clean up afterwards. So I've sort of gotten to this point where I have to remind myself like quit while I'm ahead and then give myself time to properly like clean up and readjust. Otherwise, yeah, I will just sit here for hours reworking something. And then I have to move it because then during my day, if I see it out of the corner of my eye, I'll be like, let me just do this. And then the world is lost. So,
100%. And that's especially true for you being like a tactile, like physical medium artist. But,
yeah.
I live in the world of digital, right? I'm either writing or I'm doing graphics or whatever. And so space ain't that big a problem for
Right.
me, which means the ADHD and the unlimited storage, I'm like, I can work on this forever. Um, I can always buy another drive. So anyways, now that being said, this is completely accidental, and I'll take it as just the expertise within us. But this is a perfect segue and lead
Yeah,
into our update for the week.
absolutely.
Um,
Let's do it.
so at the top of each episode, as always, any news or updates that we have on the project overall, we want to make sure we give those. This whole thing will also become a lot more update driven, and then just kind of talking about elements. Eventually we will run out of things that I feel like we can safely disclose without there being spoilers.
Yep.
Um, and so, but that's a bridge for another day. Like I don't need to worry about that today. Um, so news and updates for this week.
Cool.
We're living you're staying in art. Why? Because that's probably the biggest thing that we're working on right now. So as we already know, relaunching September 1st. We
Yep.
already know why we're relaunching because folks thought our art just looked a little too AI. And so we hear you, we understand, and so we're switching to a whole new style. That process is going to take a little bit.
Yep.
The great and exciting news is our artists are hard at work. Already starting to update content, already starting to update the artwork, and we are working to refine the style. In order to help us do that and to navigate that process, we have also brought on two additional artists that we have contracted, um, Braden and Fanta, and really, really, really excited to be working with them. They have a lot more expertise in the kind of more painterly natural style
Mhm.
That is not to say that our team doesn't. Catherine already paints that way. Gaurav has definitely more mastered that high fantasy style. Um, but every bit, I mean, the man is an artist. Like he can make whatever is needed. Um, but bringing in two new folks primarily for schedule.
Yep.
Like we need to make sure that we're keeping things moving, but then also just to help us really establish that, and having two people who have spent so many years working already in that style, I feel like just helps us get there faster in terms
Yeah.
of getting it defined, making sure it looks right, making sure it's perfect, because once we spend those weeks doing that, we'll be able to churn characters out much faster.
Yeah, and
um
then that's the whole idea too. Like we want to give you like more stuff, right, than we
yeah.
did the time around. Like we're talking
And
about
we took 2 years to,
yeah,
paying for and creating the artwork that we did make. Now we're
right.
trying to do that amount at least and more in
Yeah,
12 weeks. Like,
yeah. So
we
we're
need
talking
people.
about additional creatures. We teased it last week. We kind of there's a creature that
Items.
adding to the Neverwood items. Yeah, that's exactly where I was going. Some of those key components, some of the things that you want to see, we want to get them sketched out. We want those to be a part of this. There's stuff. I'm sure you know what you're looking for. I don't. We haven't settled on anything, but I think if you know the source material, which you'll know even more about by the time we're done tonight, then you can probably make some expectations for what kind of items we're going to throw at you. But
I
uh,
agree.
we're going to go heavy here on the art stuff and really get that stuff out. And so we're bringing on more people, more real artists to bring you more real art.
That's a fact. Yeah, but it's something we're super excited about. So they're all hard at work, getting some preliminary artwork together so that we can review that, go through that process, make sure it works, make sure it's right. We will definitely be showing it to everybody, and so we are starting with some of the characters we've already done because we want to be able to show that side by side.
Yep.
So last week we showed some of the old art just because we were talking about some of those characters. Um, and and to that point, we're definitely going to be doing a part two to that episode. You'll notice that it's called part one. Part two, we have more species, more playable species that we want to highlight and show you and talk about and discuss the inspirations and some of like the core abilities, traits, whatever. But we don't want to keep showing you art that we're not moving forward with anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like that just doesn't feel like the way to go. And so, we're gonna hold that back a little bit until we get some of the stuff. But the early figures we're working on, ones that you've already seen, because we're gonna put it out there, right?
Yep.
We want your feedback. Like we're not interested in doing all of this again and ending up in the same place. Like we want to move the ball forward, and now that we have this space, now that we are beginning to build that following, we want you guys to feel like you can be involved in the process. And so we're going to be posting it online, and we're going to be on Instagram. We'll put some stuff up on the site. I'm sure we'll do not I'm sure we will definitely do lives and show the art here,
Yep.
and kind of show that side by side. Like, here's what Peter looked like, here's what he looks like now, here's what the
Yeah.
Hada look like, here's what they look like now. Do these feel better, more comfortable, more safe, right?
Yep.
Like, and again, we know we're new, and we want you guys to feel like we are a brand that you can trust, um, and hopefully, we're showing you that, right?
Yeah.
We listen, we hear you, we adjust, and it doesn't matter how many ideas I have. You know what I'm saying? We need to make sure they speak to you. So
Absolutely.
to that end, that is where we are at with that. That's our big news. That's what we've been churning on, working on in between everybody getting sick constantly,
Yeah.
and and yeah. So we'll keep trucking. We'll keep you posted. But that's our big update now. Two brand new artists added to our art team, helping out to establish this new style, and then we will go from there. So
And with
um,
that, we're going to reference old art to talk about the rest of this episode.
yes. So as as he says that, yes, we are going to look at an image that was created for the original campaign.
Yeah,
Um, and but it's the one I have right now.
yeah.
And unless you want to like look at my my little tracing paper, sketch out, that I have. But I felt like this was a little bit more visually interesting.
Yeah,
So yes, so please don't be triggered
yeah.
by by the artwork that you're about to see.
I still
Um,
think this. I mean, this is just gorgeous. It's been gorgeous since day one.
Oh, I love it. Now, the landscapes were never an issue. Like,
Yeah,
maybe there were one or two that were a little bit on the fringe, but the landscapes are stunning, and they
yeah,
are. She already works in that painterly style. We're building out additional landscapes, and we are going to tweak some of the ones that we felt were just a little too close to the line.
yeah,
But we're super excited about all that. But yes, dude, I agree. It's gorgeous art.
yeah.
It is what it is. It's just a shame that what's happening is happening, but it's impacting so many people. And
Uh, I'm
I
not
mean,
even. I'll save it for another time. But I've been fighting the good fight on Reddit this week about related to AI usage and advertising, and people allowing certain people to get away with it and other people not. And it's been an interesting back and forth.
it's yeah, it's surreal. It's
Yeah,
surreal to watch conversations playing out in real time, in real life.
yeah,
Early concerns, red flags, all these things where we all were like, oh, let's just see, like there's no way, boom, here it is, surprise surprise, right? Like, so it's yeah, it's an interesting situation, but definitely not what we're here to talk about today.
yeah. We're here to
So,
talk about the beauty of Neverland, and if you need a
ne-
vacation, Neverland is for you. So,
so Neverland. Yes, today's focus is Neverland, and generally and specifically. Okay.
yeah,
Um, we'll be talking about Neverland generally, but
yeah,
specifically pointing out our core regions.
yeah,
And we have talked a little bit about them. Totally understand, especially last week when we were breaking down the Pan, the Hada, and the Karakan, that we definitely spoke about some of the regions that they come from, right? And and so some of this might feel a little bit redundant, a little bit of a retread, um, but I'm not that worried about it because I think what the core thing here is. It's one thing to look at a character and be told it comes from this place and this place kind of acts like this.
yeah,
It's another thing I feel to be able to actually see that in space and and to be able to put those things together.
yeah.
Also, another aside, just real quick, the ADHD brain as it's working. I am ADHD and Puerto Rican, so the hands are part of the mouth. If you haven't gotten used to it yet, you probably never will.
I mean, it's
But
a skill for me to be able to sit and have long conversations. So,
I
um,
I gave up that fight.
it's killing me to sit here right now. So,
No,
like, I have,
they're like
yeah,
they're
I
just part of
will,
me,
I will pace around the house for hours on the phone.
bro.
So, um, unless I'm going to outfit myself with a GoPro and make everyone nauseous, this is what you're gonna get. So,
That would be so good. Um, okay, so as I was saying, some of this stuff may sound a little bit familiar early on as we're
yeah,
talking about the Neverwood, the Neverplains, that kind of stuff. But we have six regions, and one big key location that I've included here because it's that important, right? Like it belongs in this conversation.
yeah,
Um, but I feel like there's going to be more. Now, last time we were giving a lot of the inspiration behind the horror elements of those
sure,
characters and then how those blended with the regions.
yep,
Today, we're not diving so much into the horror. I'm not saying we're not going to talk about it at all. I feel like that would be impossible. But the key focus today is talking about, so number one, giving new folks joining us now who haven't watched some of our previous videos and read through some of our previous info, a little bit of context as to why we chose Neverland specifically.
hmm,
Again, high level. I know we've talked about it before. And then diving directly into the regions themselves, where they sit on the map, some of the key species, NPCs, notable elements of that region, some
Yep.
of the key features of the biomes because they are all different,
Yep.
and then also the source materials that inspired them. So
Yeah.
each of those things I think will help to form a better understanding of what backers can expect in this book overall, and
Yeah.
then for DMs to start kind of thinking about, hey man, that's something I'm pretty excited about. And again, this book is still very much in development. We are, I mean, now words are going onto paper, like things are happening. This book, releases, within a year of it being launched, I believe is, yeah, a year, maybe a little less. I can't exactly remember. Maybe don't quote me on that. And especially now that things have changed in terms of when when we're
Yeah.
launching, right? But, but that being said, um, you know, feedback, right? Like, especially, in this stage, obviously we don't have like backers, but if you're following us, if you're watching this content, and that means you find it interesting, intriguing, and so therefore, you know, we want to make sure that we are hitting the mark. And so as you hear things or whatever, and it's hey, this is super cool, or hey, why this, why that, reach out to us, send us your questions, send us your comments. It not only informs these episodes, it not only gives us things to talk about or to explain, but if we're seeing a lot of people, right? Like obviously, if Bill messages and is like, I want dragons, well, Bill, no dragons, right? Like, I mean, I'm not saying no, but like, as of right now, no dragons.
The best I
Um,
can do is a never lizard.
yes. Oh yeah. Shut up, Tim. So Joe's gonna kill you. No, I'm just kidding. It's that's definitely something that we're gonna share.
Yeah.
I'm so excited for that creature. Um, but if there's 1,000 bills who are like, hey, where's the chickens? Like, oh man, well we better get some chickens in this. How do I weave a chicken into it? Right. So
Yeah.
obviously playful, but I mean it. So,
Yeah.
reach out, hit us up on Instagram, message us on the website, comment here, do whatever.
Yep.
We will see it and we will respond. And if enough of you are clamoring for something, we'll try to make it work. Like
Yeah.
we'll figure it out. So, all right.
Let's see how we fit all this together.
What'd you say?
Said, let's see. How did we fit all this
Oh,
together?
yeah. Well, all right. So, focusing on the regions, focusing on the fairy tale sources, and some of the key kind of stuff. Blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
Great. Okay. Let's see. Boom. Welcome to Neverland.
You,
Those of you who've been following us for a while have seen this before. Yep. What'd you say?
I said, you didn't even have to fly. We're bringing it right to you.
Dude, we couldn't make it easier for you. So, again, a quick high level recap of how we even ended up in Neverland at all.
Yep.
Um, Number one, it started with a Google search. When I got the idea that I wanted to write a campaign setting for Neverland, or when I decided I wanted to write a campaign setting, period.
Yes.
The first thing I wanted to see is, right, like what isn't quite out there. There are other Neverland inspired books, settings, campaigns, all kinds of stuff. But what's what is, rich soil ready
Yeah.
to be, planted, and and what would people enjoy, right? And so one of my first basic Google searches was just like, hey, what are the top literary sources for homebrews, for character builds? What are the top characters people want to play as, et cetera, et cetera? Peter Pan was consistently at the top of those lists, right? You had your
It's great.
Vaders and you had your Angs and you had your, Avatar Airbender. I mean, that's the same, but like you get what I'm saying, right? And Peter Pan was always kind of up there. Um, so that sort of checked box number one. It was interesting to me. Most of those builds seem to be primarily centered around more Fae centric and rangery type builds.
Yep.
Makes perfect sense, right? You want some flight ability. You want sort of that like marksman type stuff, and whatever. The man in tights. I get it. So that was the next question: was do I have a different story to tell? Do I have a new story to tell? And that came to me out the gate. It was just
Yeah.
like, what's Pan? Who is Pan? What's he based on? What did Barry use? J.M. Barry, who wrote the book, what did he use to influence his characters? And obviously, we introduced you to the Pan last week. If you didn't see it, go check it out.
Yep.
Our Peter is different, and our build is different,
Yep.
and I feel like it's unique and it's exciting. And so that was box number 2, right? Can I take what people have been doing on their own, and can I give them something to be excited about? Not better, different,
Yeah.
unique. And I feel like I answered that question. So boom, box number 2.
For sure.
Next, I knew that for me, the mood I was in certainly at the time was I was definitely in more of a horror-y focused thing. Um,
Sure.
this was really shaping up in earnest in October of 24. So I'm
Yes.
already in that like spooky vibe, right? Like so from, maybe January to October was a lot more of that research on like, can I even write a campaign setting? How does that work? What's the OGL? What's the SRD? What's the blah blah blah? Like,
Yeah.
former Fed contractor here. I'm good at throwing acronyms, right? So, you know, once I had that understanding, once we hit October, I'm feeling that spooky vibe.
Heck yeah.
And right, so it's Peter Pan, it's fairy tales. Fairy tales are not a stretch to turn into horror.
No.
I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm some genius writer who has cracked the code, right? Like, plenty of people, hell, fairy tales are scary, right?
Yes.
Now, I don't know. Am I that old? Are we that old? I'm 42. You're going on 41.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So I feel like maybe there's some of our audience that is just very much ingrained and grew up specifically with the more Disney era of storytelling, and a softer touch at a moral tale, right?
Yeah. If you, I have a feeling that if you don't have like a old Germanic grandmother, then maybe you haven't been exposed to like what the original Grimm's and that kind of stuff was like.
Yep.
I mean, there's body mutilation, there is pain, there is for everything that is like pretty and glossy and princessy and castle-y in Disney. I mean, you have Cinderella's stepsisters are chopping off their toes and their heels to fit their feet in those shoes in the original stories.
Yep.
So yeah, it's not a stretch. People make a big deal about some of the Disney stuff going public domain, right? Like the Steamboat Willie and some of the earlier Winnie the Pooh stuff, and making those into horror movies coming up.
Even
um
Peter Pan. There's a horror Peter Pan.
and, but it's not new.
It's not. And so that's thing number one. The reason I even bring it up is because I feel like getting that out there instantly, hopefully, puts folks at ease of like, oh, do these guys think they're clever? Not when it comes to this,
No.
right? I show my cleverness in other ways. Like,
Yeah.
how do I build out my species? How do I build out the stuff? And that's the key part, right? The fun challenge, right, of doing this is not like, I'm not unique for turning fairy tales into horror.
Yeah.
Um, but finding the connective threads to combine these various source materials into one world, right? So having that overarching source and then supplementing it in a way that builds and expands without disconnecting,
Yeah.
right? And can I interweave these regions? Can I interweave these characters from these different tales and stories,
Yep.
bring them into our world, the D&D space, and still make it feel narratively grounded and cohesive and intentional,
Mhm.
And of course, fun to play, fun to be in, and fun to experience. And can I make it unique enough that it feels worth your time,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And, you know, call me cocky or whatever, but I feel like I can do that. And so here we are. And 2 years later, we have Nightmares in Neverland. So source books, right?
Yeah.
Let's see here. I'm gonna try to do this in a way that's not, you know, clunky and weird, but it's gonna be clunky and weird.
Sure.
All right. What are our source books? Obviously, J.M. Barrie's Peter Pan, right? So originally titled Peter and Wendy,
Mhm.
released in 1911, which was a little bit after the stage play. I think the stage play was like in the '07 type realm,
Yeah.
but the book came out later. And so that is that's our Bible in
Yes.
terms of setting the overall stage
The North Star, or the second star, if you will. There you
to
go.
the right. Yes, 100%. Much better said. Well said, sir. So yes, Peter and Wendy, Peter Pan, 1911, J.M. Barrie's novel, serves as the guiding light for many of the things that we do. It is the framework for the land itself,
Yep.
overall, and certainly the framework for the vast majority of our sort of key. Well, vast majority might be strong, but needless to say, at a minimum, you know, two technically, maybe you could push it as far as three, and even some of the, the merfolk areas that we'll talk about a little bit
Mhm.
also exist in Neverland. And so, although we have used additional source materials, as you'll see in a second, to
Yep.
supplement that, um, but it should come as no surprise that Nightmares in Neverland is primarily influenced by this book. Now, on top of that, what else do we have? So we have The Adventures of Pinocchio, which
Mhm.
was originally titled Story of a Puppet, or like The Adventures of Pinocchio, a Marionette's Tale. Like it's gone through several early titles.
Sure.
Um, but we have supplemented a lot of our story with The Adventures of Pinocchio.
And
Um,
if you don't know why that is scary in and of itself, then I can't help you. And just ask childhood me, who happened to find a bagged up marionette in the corner of his closet that doesn't know where it came from.
bro.
Yeah, that's all you need to know about Pinocchio.
Dude, I'll tell you what creeped me out about Pinocchio. So obviously, the classic Disney flick, has its parts. The donkey transformation
Ugh.
stuff haunted
Yeah.
me as a child. But what really got me creeped out about Pinocchio, I remember seeing the Disney version and liking it and being like, I want to own it, right? And that was a big deal when I was a kid. Getting that white clamshell case with your
Yeah.
Disney VHS in there was
Yep.
money. And I wanted Pinocchio so bad, I begged and begged and begged. My mom and my grandma, bless their hearts, bought me the Pinocchio they could find, I guess. And it was the weirdest, like, just random. I'm sure it wasn't random, right? I'll probably like look it up one day and it's some big studio who did a more true to the book version.
Right.
But the the point is, anyone who grew up like us in the 80s and 90s, early 90s, heyday of the Disney animation style, blah, 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 like, anything that looked even a little bit off was just very different.
Yep.
But that movie, bro, creeped me out so bad. And I just didn't like it. I think I maybe watched it like twice and I just wouldn't watch it. And I think
Yeah.
maybe the second time could have been even my mom being like, dude, you better watch this movie. So your grandma went through a lot of trouble to get it. You know what I'm saying? Like I could totally see it. I'm not saying that's what happened. But I could see it. Anyways, all right, let's get off Pinocchio. But yes, Pinocchio by Carlo Collodi,
Yep.
first published in the U.S., I believe, or translated anyway in 1883. Um, the next book that we use, boom, The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood.
Yeah.
Robin Hood is super interesting. So Robin Hood is really based primarily in folklore, and kind of like Homer with the Iliad and the Odyssey, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't know if this is fact. I growing up, Homer was the author of the Iliad and the Odyssey. Now I feel like it's more of an understanding that Homer is not necessarily a person, but rather a multitude, and we have collected these works and blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. Robin Hood worked very similarly. It was a lot of oral tradition, it was a lot of folklore, etc. But it was Howard Pyle in 1883 who compiled a lot of that, gave it sort of a narrative thread, and built the the story and the fable that we know today.
Yep.
Um, and so, again, another key element, and certainly, as you'll see in a moment, something that we've given a lot of credence to, and a lot of play in terms of actually developing a whole region that's really focused primarily on this book.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, the last two, which I'll show together here, just to not have to keep clicking things, and it's no sense in delaying it, are poems by Hans Christian Andersen.
Yeah.
So, The Little Mermaid, right? Yes, there's mermaids in Neverland. J.M. Barrie's book is like 130 pages.
Yeah.
So, everything gets mentioned for a moment, right? But it's like, dude, I think we want some merfolk. We want a region that maybe feels more challenging to explore in full,
Yep.
something that maybe a DM would dedicate a whole campaign to, or let it be that beacon, that far off distant thing that you cannot achieve or attain and keeps you wanting it later, right? Like, whatever your path, I knew I wanted an underwater realm.
Heck, it could
And
even be a follow-up campaign for us, Nightmares in Neverland 2, Underwater Boogaloo. Like,
yes, exactly, exactly. So I think that was very obvious to me. This was an easy one
yeah,
because we just needed a little bit more meat. Um, and then the Snow Queen, right? Younger audiences would probably recognize this as the inspiration behind Frozen, for example. But Hans Christian Andersen's poem is very different and might be one of the favorite things that I've read so far in
yeah,
terms of influencing this story. And I think that'll be evident as we talk about a little bit today about some of the NPCs that you'll expect there, but
yep,
certainly in like the later editions of our character breakdown that we did last week, I think you'll see a lot of NPCs and character influence from that poem alone. Like,
yeah,
it is not that long, and it is just full of rich content that was so fun to play with. Like,
yeah.
such a cool story. Um, Honestly, it almost made me hate Frozen, and I love Frozen. Like, it's so good. So, also, all of these are in the public domain. All of these are available. Like, you can find translations online for free, and especially the Hans Christian Andersen stuff. They are not heavy lifts in terms of
Yeah,
reading, and
for sure.
so if you haven't read these source books, like, give them a check out, because give them a check out, give them a read. What the hell is wrong with me today,
I mean,
bro?
I guess if you go to the library, you'd check them out, but
I mean, that's fair. That's fair. Um, Now, one of the bigger it doesn't matter. I don't have to get into the nitty gritty of like public domain and making sure the translations were
so
included, and
yeah,
like, but also too, dude, we've changed so much. Like, we're basically pulling names, and basic character things, and we are really putting a spin on them.
yeah. I mean, that's just impacted the entirety of the world. Like, I mean, this graphic kind of pares down our Neverland, but Neverland's gonna be huge. Like, it is expanded completely, from the original idea that we had. And I think we've mentioned this before, that like some of this could have been future expansions, but now that we've been able to kind of pull on these threads and fit them together, it's become this one world. And
Yes.
hopefully, a campaign that we get to write would be amazing. So
100%. And to your point, you make an excellent point. Neverland is huge, right? That may not be obvious looking at a picture on the screen, but it is the key difference between our Neverland and the Neverland that J.M. Barrie envisioned.
Yeah.
So, J.M. Barrie actually specifically wrote in his book that so actually here I'll just read it. So, okay, of all the delectable islands, the Neverland is the snuggest and most compact. Not large and sprawly, with tedious distances between one adventure and another, but nicely crammed. And my favorite line, actually, that justifies the horror is right after it. And we've read that one before, but it's, when you play at it in the tablecloth, it's not the least bit alarming. But then in the 2 minutes before you go to sleep, that's why you need night lights. So,
Yeah.
right there, a perfect example of like in one sentence, this fun, cool, exciting Neverland, not crammed, great adventures. But then, and it's like, again, I'm not taking credit for that.
Yeah.
But ours, I I was very tempted to be like, let's just build a tiny little world and let's make it true to the book, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't think that would have done the setting justice.
Sure.
And I wanted to be able to give something more robust to give people, I want the book to have a lot of bang for your buck. I
Yeah.
want you to be able to build a campaign where you walk and traipse through every part of Neverland if you want to. You could
Yeah.
spend months, years doing it. Or you could have enough meat that you could do a whole campaign or at least a mini campaign just in a single region or just
Yeah.
in one or two, and pick, one of the threads or the connections that feels the most exciting and just pick and choose how you want it to be. And so in order to do that, it had to be bigger. Because I'm a writer and I'm narrative focused, to me, I have a hard time stretching it too far. And so in order to fit more stuff, I needed to make the space bigger.
Yeah.
And so that's how, again, we end up with the land that we have.
And I just like looking at maps like this, right? Like, if
Yeah.
you have a DM who likes to share a lot of that stuff, or will share maybe an unmarked map or something like that at the beginning of a campaign, to just kind of look at this and be like, "Ooh, what's that? Like, I want to go there." Or like, I think one of the cool things that came up when you ran Curse of Strahd, like some of those components, there was a tarot reading that's full of riddles, and you're like, "Ooh, what on this map kind of might might fit that location that you're alluding to?" And that, like, I love that. And honestly, I felt like that world in Strahd was kind of small compared to some of the homebrews that we've played, where it's like you got this giant world in front of you and you're like, "Oh, I want to go there," and, "Oh, we got to pass through this." And so I just looking at this just gets me all excited, because I'm like, "Ooh, it looks like there's a cave over there," and like, "Ooh, what's this dark spot over here, and why are there towers sticking up out of the water?" Like, I already just want to go adventure all over this place, right? Like, it's
I'm
just that,
glad you feel that way, buddy.
it pulls you right in. Like, why is there this giant tree? And it's just that I'm all for that. I'm all for that.
Yeah. No, it's those are all solid points. And to that point, um, want it to be big, want it to be expansive, but also I do want to stay somewhat true to the book. And so just a little bit, kind of inside baseball sort of look is, when I come up against one of those decisions, right? Can I are there other ways that I can achieve that feeling without having to limit myself to a
Yeah.
small world? And so the answer to that is pretty simple. Like we can build in systems and mechanics and regions and elements that can get you where you want to go. And so, I don't like the term fast travel because it's not like you're teleporting from here to there like Skyrim or Diablo or whatever, but like you are and we're certainly not necessarily fast forwarding. I don't like that either. I don't like there being big passages of time where it's like, okay, we're just going to pretend either nothing happened or whatever, or putting a lot of onus on the DM to kind of come up with as you traveled, you blah blah blah, but instead giving actual grounded and common sense sort of ways that you can get from point A to point B naturally at a faster pace.
Yeah.
And it's, you don't have to get a horse or do whatever, right? So, again, I don't want to give up the ghost. But we'll touch a little bit on that in
Sure.
one of our regions here.
For sure.
All right, so shall we?
Yeah. Let's
Um,
take it.
we're already at 42 minutes, and
Yeah.
so, but we're good. Um, this next section, I'm not saying we're going to tear through it, but again, just a general overview of where each region is
Yep.
and what you can generally expect out of it.
Sure.
And, so in that sense, what type of biome is it? What's the environment like? Just highlighting very briefly which source materials inspired it, and plus other inspirations. And then the primary species or NPCs, that kind of stuff that you can expect to find there. That
Beautiful.
is intended to be broad because we can drill down region to region specifically in future episodes.
Yep.
Um, but as you can see, it's taken us 43 minutes to get here. So we'll be here all night, right? All right, let's take a look first and foremost at the Neverwood. I am a designer. I can do better, but I did all this very quickly today. I've got kids. We've been sick. I've got all kinds of other stuff going on. So just give me a little grace. I promise you. Don't like look at these graphics and how crappily I lassoed, the
I,
areas
I like it.
and be right. But I'm just saying, right? Like a true designer could look at it and be like, what the heck? He makes the stuff? No, no, no. Trust me. I can do it better. All right. So the Neverwood. We don't have to spend a ton of time in the first three, I don't think, because last week, as I said, we touched on that. Check out
For sure.
last week's episode, and you can find out a lot more about the Pan, the Hada, and the Karakin, and a little bit more detail about some of these regions. When we talk about when we break down the other species, we will also, further break down each region, or vice versa, whatever. We'll figure it out. Okay. So the Neverwood, it is a tropical jungle. That's the biome, right? And so think about what you would find there. Lots of vines, dense trees, dense canopies, ferns are everywhere, waterfalls, lots of water, like
Yep.
tons of water. And then the types of creatures you would expect to find there. Now, I promise you, you can think about all the jaguars and all the whatevers that you want. They ain't going to look quite like that.
Right.
And so, that's the kind of stuff you can expect to find. In terms of the inspiration, it should not be a surprise. It is Peter Pan.
Yes.
Um, I'll come back to this other point, and then additional inspirations were Puerto Rico, El Yunque. El Yunque is the national rainforest. It's the only rainforest in the United States, because Puerto Rico is a Commonwealth territory of the United States, and it's absolutely stunning. It's beautiful. I'm from Puerto Rico. We've visited many times. I lived there for a short amount of time, and every time we would go and visit, didn't matter how many times we went, that's where you want to go. You could hike and swim in the waterfalls. You could drive all the way up to the peak. And I just remember there was this incredible, it doesn't matter. There's this super awesome, it's the best churrasco sandwich, the best churrasco steak and chimichurri I've ever had in my life. And it was just this little hut at the top of the hill, and it was
Yeah.
delicious. The point is, huge inspiration for me as I thought about Neverland, and certainly the Neverwood.
Yep.
Um, it's just what I pictured, and I could not separate my mind from it. So that is a huge influence on this region. And as we talked about last week, some of the key species. So the primary species that calls this region home are the Pan,
Mhm.
and some of the key NPCs there. You've got Peter Pan. So the Lost Boys, they will be represented as Pan, right? So the Toodles and the twins and the ones that you would expect to see as characters and NPCs will be Pan.
Yeah.
The Lost Boys in general, as you know them in the book, will have been converted to a completely different creature that we will
Correct.
break down later, but more of a homunculi that King Peter has created.
Yep.
Um, and so these are some of the things that you can expect to find. Um, I'm super excited about it. I think, not I think, it is it is the core heart and soul of this book.
For
This
sure.
is this is the throne of Neverland. So the Never tree at its center, this massive tree that, and this is a huge jungle, and that tree stands, I mean, for perspective, right? Like, there's a whole underwater castle over there, like, and you'll be able to see a little bit of Hook ship in a second, but like, that's a big tree.
Yeah.
And that is the throne room of the pan, and it's the throne of Neverland. So the Neverwood is the core of our story, it's the core of our book, and certainly the core of our campaign, the reign of the pan. And yeah, I mean, I'm gonna stop there because I don't want to give away spoilers, and I'll talk about it forever.
And
So
I'll just say, like, add on top of that too, just keep in mind that you've got the lens of, childhood, children's dreams, children's imagination all tied onto this, right? So the creatures that you can expect outside of, like some of those play not, outside of the NPCs, they're going to be mashed up weird kind of amalgamations, the lizard that we've alluded to and some of this other stuff that we're going to throw in there. They are going to be, the way I keep thinking about it is they are going to be the the way you explain a dream to somebody. It's like, it was my house, but it wasn't quite right. Like, I know it
yes,
was my house, but it was a little wrong. Or I was at work, but it wasn't really the office. We all, sat on jelly beans. Like, something, it's going to be slightly weird.
yep, absolutely. And to that point too, right? We're about to explore some of the other, so tropical jungle, but then there's other biomes, right? Now, first things first, like, it's a big space, but is it 50,000 miles, if 5,000 miles from the Neverwood to the snow-capped mountains? No. Would there be, a jungle necessarily right there? No. That is where some of the fantastical license comes in, right? Like, this whole world is powered by the dreams of children. And as a kid, right, you would like, if you're dreaming of your dream world, like, sure, maybe, and to a DM's perspective, your whole dream is in the Neverwood, and it's a
Yep.
jungle dream, and it's whatever. Or you're like me, and it's like, I want to be in the jungle, and then I want to take the train to the mountains, and I want to do whatever. I'm not saying there's a train. I'm just saying in your dream, right? And so, I did feel safe to put some of these biomes together because we are framing it in the structure of, like, the people who live here have to endure that and they're at the mercy of it. That is an interesting dynamic to me. And then, as long as we have an answer as to why, which we do, I feel good about it. So
Just hope your DM doesn't use encumbrance because you're going to need clothes for all weather.
that's, that's fair. Absolutely fair. All right, so the Neverwood, home of the Pan and King Peter, we're in the reign of the Pan. Directly next to it, we enter the Never Plains. The
Mhm.
Never Plains, again, inspired by the same book, Peter Pan. This biome is more of a grasslands slash Great Plains. Grasslands to help kind of weave the jungle into the plains before we get into the Great Plains.
Mhm.
And of course, there'll be a little bit of sort of like Saharan plains,
Sure.
vibe in terms of some of the base for our creatures and things like that.
Yep.
We can't have all like bison and stuff, right? Like, we need some of the exciting stuff.
Yeah.
And so that is the general inspiration behind that biome and what it has. The species, the Hada. So we talked a lot about them last week, and so again, I won't dwell, but a very tight connection between Tinkerbell as the Hada Domina and King Peter as the warrior king of the Pan.
Yep.
And that's obvious in the book. Their alliance is very strong, and the way that we've handled that in the book is awesome. So putting those regions together only makes sense, as they support each other. Support, I use loosely, maybe gaslight, and whatever might be more accurate. But regardless, these are very key ties to our story,
Yes.
and so these regions being close together and those creatures interacting are key. Here you're gonna find your Tinkerbell and some more Lost Boys. The Lost Boys are creature Lost Boys. Um, Work across both of these, and that'll be something that we talk about a little bit later. But they
Yeah.
work across both of these biomes and both of these regions, both supporting and defending the Pan as well as the Hada, and some of the things that they are working very hard to keep hidden and safe.
Yeah.
So your Never Plains right there with the Neverwood, and you've got your Tinks and your Pete's. Boom.
And if you think, we said the Pan, obviously with the throne room being in the giant tree, the Hada will have kind of more of a burrowy type look to their home. Not really Hobbit hole, somewhere maybe between Hobbit and Groundhog or Prairie Dog kind of situation going on there. Um,
Yeah, I think that's fair.
right. And so I just sort of see them, and we have some older art from this, but especially this time of year on the East Coast with the lightning bugs or fireflies, whatever you want to call them. You look out right now, and I back up to woods, and you look out about this time every night, and it's just glittery. So I kind of I that's the kind of plainy vibe that I get from this area with the glittering bug-like fairies all over the place, bouncing around from hole to hole. Like, I
Yep.
think,
But keep in mind, these are small creatures. I think they're
yes,
small or tiny. I can't
yeah.
remember, but
So I think
they
up to 2 feet for the
they could
domina.
be as big as 2 feet. Yeah.
Yeah,
So like they're small, but they ain't that small. But we have, again, not to give away too much, right? But there are, because they're insectoid, they have various
correct.
stages, and so you do get varying sizes and different things. But it's you brought up something else. Crap. Um, you brought up something really. Oh, slightly additional inspiration. So kind of those little. I like how you put it. Hobbit hole meets prairie dog. Um, yeah, those are like the Hada burial mounds,
Yeah.
and I will leave that there.
Okay.
But in terms of additional inspiration, right, the Hada are greatly influenced by like ancient Rome, that Latin culture, and I mean Latin in terms of like actual like dead language Latin,
Right.
like Latin, not like Latin, like Latin. And so that's why you have the Hada Domina, that kind of stuff. But also a lot of influence from like ancient Egypt. And maybe a lot is strong, but when I think about those burial mounds, I start to go into sort of that Valley of the Kings kind of
Yeah.
vibe and aesthetic, where the maybe not so on the face, but like because they are trying to hide these areas. Um, but I studied art history in undergrad. It was my minor, and the Pharaonic periods and the Pharaonic art was, is that and High Renaissance, which that everyone loves that, and everyone loves Pharaonic stuff too. But um, greatly influenced by my own interests there. And when I visualize these places cinematically, it's just how I see them.
Yeah.
And so you can definitely expect a lot. So, and when I say like ancient Rome and front, it's also a hierarchy structure in terms of a reverence for perhaps a god queen sort of situation.
Sure.
Um, you know, and it definitely alludes to a little bit about what we talked about last week, but just how deeply powerful and important these two species are. The Pan who have risen to this great power, but also the Hada who are the ancient power.
Right.
And their magic and their lives tied so tightly to Neverland, where, and again, not going too far, those connections and inspirations just felt really good and accurate. And
Yeah.
and so again, things that you can expect out of that region would sort of hint at some of that stuff. And so as you're traipsing through, like, maybe if you're walking by and you see something that looks like maybe a prairie dog hole, but a little off, that might be something worth exploring at your
Yeah.
own risk, of course.
Of course. Of
So,
course.
anyway, all right. So, we've got the Never Plains. We talked about that a little bit. Okay. Before we move into our next official region, I do want to touch quickly because this is technically a location. but
Yes.
the but it isn't, right?
Yeah.
And while it is not its own region and biome, it is what we've already talked about. It is where the Karakan are. And so right here kind
It's
of
the unnatural area, like, right? Like non-native, like,
I you know what? That's a fair point. That's a
yeah,
really great way. It is uh like
artificial. Like,
domesticated, right?
yeah,
So, okay, let's just say, okay, technically not a region. Um and obviously the primary source material is still Peter Pan because we're talking about the Karakin, which are the pirates. That's
yeah.
your Captain Hooks, that's your Smee, that's those guys. Um so, and also too, because of that, pirates, right? It's heavily influenced by the golden age of piracy, right? So we're
Yeah.
talking like early 1700s Spanish Main, the Caribbean, your Tortugas, your whatever. Again, of course, I'd be inspired by the Caribbean, but this is definitely, just that imperial Spanish empire,
Yeah.
just, you know, without all the nasty, right? Like just the aesthetic, right? And that kind of thing. Um, the in terms of that term where we were thinking about domesticated and stuff, what you may or not be able to see, I know it might be small on the screen. I should have like zoomed it in. I'm an idiot. But the here you have Keel Hall K. Keel
Yep.
Hall K.
Yep.
Keel Hall K is the name of our town right now. And this has been the area carved out by the Karakan. They are not native to Neverland and are at great odds with the Pan.
Yeah.
So just like in our book, Pan and Hook, no likey.
Yeah.
Their motivations greatly different from the book, and then the DMs have full license to determine which one is your heavy, which one is whatever. We certainly have a take that we will explore in our campaign, and it is not a mystery or a spoiler. It's called Reign of the Pan. Pan looks how he looks. I think you can put some things together, but um, the campaign setting itself will have a much broader agency for DMs to make the story what they want it to be.
For sure.
And so the Karakan have come to Neverland in search of, you know, told all these great treasures that they've heard and all this stuff. This land that is unexplorable, and they have found themselves here, um, and we'll keep all that. And they have carved out this area. Now, the Pan and the Hada are very territorial and protective of Neverland. They're the guardians of Neverland, effectively. And while they may be making some sketchy choices, this place means a lot to them. And the Karakan have come in and they have carved out the section. There's a massive wall.
Mhm.
Definitely. Inspired a bit by the whole, Game of Thrones and stuff with the ice wall. Ours is definitely not that, but just this massive wall under constant barrage attack,
Yep.
and they're just at constant odds. So Keelhaul K is not just any location.
Yeah.
This is a location with a lot of life, a lot of vibrancy, and a lot of conflict.
Yep.
And especially with you know, I didn't feel like it's large enough to be its own region at all by any stretch, and it takes from the regions, which is part of the narrative.
Hmm.
And so, clearly a location, but definitely not one that should be not discussed in this chat.
Yeah.
So yeah, so our primary species there, they're humans. It's the Karakan. There are pirates, and obviously your key NPCs will be Captain James Hook and
Hmm.
Governor Smee.
Yeah.
Smee no longer just bosun to Hook as he is in the book, but they have been here for long enough, ageless, I should say, as a little hint to not only the book but some of our story that we might dive into in a future episode.
Hmm.
Blessing or curse, TBD. I mean, it's been TBD'd by me, but
Right.
we'll see how much we say. But they've been here for quite some time.
Yeah.
and their reasons and motives for being here are nope, can't say that. So they've been here for a long time, and they have set up this firm camp, um, and so definitely something that we need to chat about here.
Yeah. Definitely something that, as we have said, would be a scar on the land to native Neverland species.
That's exactly the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. Um, all right, next.
Let's get into some of the ones that we have not talked about previously. These
Yeah.
are fun. These are fun.
Let's open up with that gleaming light that we talked about. So we
Yeah.
have Coral Caves and the Abyss. So it's technically one region, but also technically two separate biomes, right? You have like the shallows, the under, the sea like environment, and then that deep abyss.
Yeah.
I believe those would technically be classified as two separate biomes, but here they obviously, it's all one thing. That
Sure.
said, you can also kind of see it is the largest uh, it is the largest region in terms of just how much space it takes up, and so again, and because it's perhaps not the easiest to access, the this gives a lot of opportunity
Yeah.
for, I mean, setting whole campaigns in it, or just sort of tucking it aside and pulling. It will be, it is built in such a way that you as a DM will be able to take key elements
Sure.
out of those regions and bring them onto here. So, hence why not only are we using our mermaids from Neverland, from Peter Pan, as a core source for this region, but also bringing in Hans Christian Andersen's The Little Mermaid,
Right.
because that brings merfolk out of the water and
Yep.
gives us a ready to go, built in, simple way to facilitate that and give us a canvas to be able to expand on and flavor for our world. Um,
Exactly.
so I'm trying so hard. Uh, Joe, I hope you're appreciating this. I am trying so hard to give good information that people find interesting, uh, without giving away the ghost.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um, anyways, that's the last time I'll say it. I know I've said it every 3 seconds. Okay, so we have our underwater, we have our abyss, we have our primary sources for that. Additionally, the sorry, I'm looking at my notes and I don't understand what this says. So, blah blah blah. Okay. Um, additionally, greatly inspired as the Pan are. Again, all sort of, these are the oldest regions of Neverland,
Yeah.
mainly because they're the ones that are poorly based in J.M. Barrie's work. And so
Hmm.
these are our most ancient ones. Neverland has expanded over time as children have dreamt up new areas and worlds, or not worlds, but new regions. And and so some of the ones that we're going to talk about here in a second are, that will be clear in the story, right? These have come up later. They are primarily, you know, not primarily, there are more humans in those areas. And as they have come and traveled and set up camp outside of those like ancient battlegrounds of Neverland, and so this is definitely one of them. And so just like the Pan are heavily influenced by Greek mythology, the Sirena are as well. The Sirena are the primary species in this region, and definitely using like the works of, we were just talking about Homer, using the works of Homer and his sirens and the ancient Greek sirens. Now, big difference, right? The sirens uh, are historically bird folk,
Hmm.
so female, and they are more winged and feathered and bird-like, and their siren call, that's how they were represented.
But
We have definitely gone with the more modern uh, sort of idea of a merfolk kind of
yeah.
crossed with a siren.
Yep.
um, I'm not going to delve too deep into their stuff because we will save their nightmarish forms and some of their more interesting traits for when
Yep.
we discuss them later,
For
when
sure.
we have their artwork. But definitely what you can expect there are those flavors and influences. And again, we don't want to restrict. We want you to be able to set that aside if you want to, but not sacrifice access to some of those characters. And we'll talk a little bit about that in our next one.
Hmm.
But some of the primary NPCs here, the Sea King, um, I'm not gonna lie, Disney crushed it. Like, so some of these, they're not named. I'm coming up with names, and I will be honest, the inspiration has not hit just yet because
Sure.
I just want to tie up a few ends before I commit to final names.
Yeah.
But anyways, a male siren is called a Triton. So King Triton is awesome. Well
Yeah.
done. Like, obviously, these are professionals who did their research,
Way to not leave room for the rest of us.
but we can't use it. So right now, he's the Sea King. We also have a Sea Witch. She
Yep.
dwells within the abyss. And then the working name that I have for one of our chief NPCs amongst the Serena, right? Who would in essence be your Little Mermaid, is a character that I've been calling Maris, and but we'll see where that ends up.
Yep.
Um, but that is certainly what you can kind of expect out of there. All right, shall we?
Hmm.
Looking good. Okay, we got three more. We could do this. We
Yes,
could
we
do
can.
this. All right.
Yes, we can.
Um, next we have Sherwood Forest. So Sherwood Forest is definitely one of those regions that is new to Neverland and is obviously inspired by Peter Pan. No, I'm just kidding. It's
Yeah.
inspired by the Merry Adventures of Robin Hood.
Yeah.
So, let's just get it out of the way. Like, what NPCs will you find? You'll find Robin Hood, you'll find Little John, you'll find the Friar, you'll find Will Scarlet. And I'll stop there for a second. But those are the characters that come out of Robin Hood.
Yes.
There is, because right, we're kind of weaving these regions together, there is also inspiration from Hans Christian Andersen's The Snow Queen here. And those NPCs include, probably, I don't want to say she definitely is, but she is up there in terms of one of the NPCs that I am the most excited about. Her name is Gerda,
Hmm.
and she is pulled from the pages of Hans Christian Andersen, and she is a she is a fierce, fierce NPC who maybe doesn't understand quite yet just how powerful she can be.
Yeah.
And I will I will allude a bit that in her current state, and as I've said, all things are subject to change. In her current state, she is our primary NPC representing a by species character. Is that how we would say that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So she will be a, half human, half I think I'll hold it, but she's a half, right? And so again, kind of weaving our narrative together and giving space to bring things out of certain areas into others, and just giving examples of how that can be done.
Yep.
Um this biome is a boreal forest.
Correct.
And so, as compared to the tropical jungle of the Neverwood, this is more of your, colder, chillier, like
Canadian
pine
wilderness.
tree Canadian, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
With also, nods to the rainy, shadowy kind of like, Britain,
Yeah.
the UK type weather. Um, they are obviously also then heavily influenced by like Celtic and Britain and Saxon Anglo-Saxon type folklore, and so primary species there obviously being the humans who make up the Merry Men
Yep.
and Robin Hood and his band. These are kind of bandity, rangery, they are what you would expect, right?
Yeah.
They're going to do some sketchy things for some maybe good reasons,
Yeah.
perhaps, right? So a lot of fun to play with and write and sort of build that tribe out. You've got Gerda, and then there is I'll just say there's a character who we are calling the Witch of Sherwood Forest.
Hmm.
She has a name, she has stuff, but that is definitely a spoiler. But there is the Witch of Sherwood Forest lives in there, and some of the locations within there are things that there's Lake Loxley, you've got Nottingham, like we've and that's a key thing to illustrate here is maybe not in underwater, etc., but like in Sherwood you've got like it's large enough. You've got some small settlements and towns
For
within the
sure.
woods,
Yep.
and so we'll see that again in Finnmark. We'll see that in a couple places. Now, the Neverwood and the Never Plains a little bit less so because these are highly defended by a very powerful species. You're not going to get a lot, but you do have the Neverwood. You've got the Never Tree. You've got the Throne Room of the Pan. Um, I'm calling tentatively sort of the general term for the Pan as a people are the Horden, and so amongst the Horden you have familial clans. I know I'm going backwards here, but you've got those familial clans amongst the Horden, and so those would come with their encampments and things like that within the Neverwood. But you're not going to have, besides the Caracan and what they've carved from the wood, you're not going to have like a settlement of
Yeah.
humans or an alternate species so much within the wood itself.
For sure.
There's a lot keeping you out of there, right? So, I mean, nothing keeps you out of anywhere, but it would be more challenging for a bunch of humans to settle permanently in the Neverwood compared to the newly dreamt Sherwood Forest,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yep.
Let's see. Okay, for the sake of time, I think we'll keep trucking here.
Yep.
Um, okay, next, the region of Finnmark.
Heck yeah.
Uh, Finnmark is definitely pulled almost exclusively from the Snow Queen,
So
and again another example where we have some competing characters and
yep.
species, and so this would again be a region where you might have certain settlements compared to others. So within Finnmark, in the region itself, and you can see some of these little burrows into the mountain.
Yeah.
One of the chief species are the Osoin, and the
Hmm.
Osoin are a bear folk clan, and based in the mountains, they are definitely greatly inspired by like Norse, sort of folklore, and they take on this bear folk appearance.
Giant axe wielding polar bears is just all I can think of.
Yeah, I mean, you're in the right space. They, I admit they are a little bit maybe cliche, but
Eh,
I couldn't pass it up. To
no.
me, like that look and aesthetic is too fun to ignore. It's our first book. We are ArcaneOso. The
Yep.
bear is our mascot, and forgive me if yeah, I could have made them anything. I wanted a bear.
Yeah.
If I never put a bear in a book again, there's gonna be a bear in this one, and
I think we
so
almost have to put a bear in everything now, just because.
I mean,
Like
but I'd be okay with it being a little bit more,
subtle.
Easter eggy. Yeah, yeah, subtle. That's the word. But nah, this one I'm just like I'm unapologetic. I want
Yep.
bears, and
Yep.
so we have the Oso. And now a little bit more, uh, perhaps I mean not nuance, but just to give it some difference. We also have the Kingdom of the Snow Queen, and
Yep.
you can see her castle up on the mountain. It's an ice castle, and there is a primarily human contingent that has settled there. You will find in a lot of these regions, whether they're human or otherwise, there will be sort of a natural. some of them will work well together. Some of them will be much more combative. But the notion of a native people and then an outsider group, whether
Yes.
they are invading or invasive, or whether they are symbiotic and play well together, all of that exists, and you'll have that space. But you'll see that as a sort of a common thread through. In addition, the same way that with the Neverwood, the Neverplains, and Coral Caves, you have that organic meshing of those species and NPCs just in terms of their connections to the source material. The same is kind of true here, and we had to weave it a little bit differently, and that is why we have a Gerda. And
Yeah.
Gerda gets pulled out of Finnmark and placed into Sherwood to sort of help to bridge that gap. Gerda is from Snow Queen, and so, I don't think it's too much of a stretch to see that in the same way in the poem, her mission takes her to the mountain. She will have motivations and conflicts that bring those regions together and and make it simple for players to form alliances with some of these NPCs, but then also giving DMs a clear path, right? And that narrative guide and that narrative thread to say, great, you want to be here and interact with this, these things play very well together.
Yeah.
Furthermore, there are connective tissues across, these bordering regions. So, there are some connections without giving away too much where, Sherwood and the Neverwood slash Never Plains have a strong connective tie. Um, Finnmark and the Caracan have a connective tie.
Mhm.
And those exist also through the next region that we'll talk about here in a second.
Yeah.
Finnmark is obviously tundral and mountainous and, ice, right? So that's going to be your cold weather, lots of, cold damage, all those kinds of things you can expect in those areas.
Again, if you didn't pack those layers, ouch.
Your SOL. Okay, key NPCs, obviously you got the Snow Queen,
Yep.
um, and we talked about Gerda, and uh
And the Oswin.
I don't think. Well, the Osu, but in terms of like key NPCs,
Oh,
I
sure,
don't
sure.
think I can. I don't think I
Yeah.
can say that one here.
Yep.
Um, and one of them really alludes to one of Gerda's like primary storylines, so we're gonna
Yeah.
keep that one too. Okay. Um, Last but not least, we have the caverns.
Ooh.
Um, I'm sure I'll come up with a better name. For now, they're just the caverns. Never caverns sounded silly, etc. So the caverns are a cavernous biome, right? Caves and the like. The primary source for this one, and certainly not the region, but definitely the inhabitants, is the Adventures of Pinocchio.
This is my
Um,
great contribution to the project. I'm good for one idea a year.
That's it, bro. And so Tim, you bring up a banger point. Like I'm sitting, I got the region nailed, and I'm just looking for that connective tissue, and I start to pull that together in terms of I create and write the character who will be um, this magical, you know, a guy who can, I mean, a tinkerer, right?
And tinker and build and create and
And he can create these magical items and do these things. And so this character is a strong connective tie, especially with some of the human races coming in, or
yeah.
species coming in. Sorry, some of the human clans and stuff coming in because they're all human. They're
Yep.
just variants. And then this character, I understood how he connected, how he allied with, one of them, and maybe kind of playing double agent with another,
Sure.
but I couldn't really pinpoint how I wanted to ground it in source material.
Yeah.
And that's where you came in.
Yep.
And so it was one of those moments where you just almost feel stupid. Like you're just like, wow, it was just right there.
And
Um,
I mean, that was just keyed off of the fact that somebody asked a question specifically about Disney's Pinocchio. That you see this whole segment where they're trying to bring little boys to the island and convert them, turn them into donkeys. And um, as far as we know, they stay donkeys and they are abandoned to live out their days on this island. And I was like, holy crap, that's terrifying. And there we go. We take the innate terrifying nature of some of these even Disney version stories, and you can pull something out of it. And I think this dude is going to be creepy.
Absolutely true. And so to that end, so Tim is pitching that whole concept, and I'm like, yo, that's awesome, but also thank you, because I'm sitting here thinking about this guy who can craft these things and then
Yep.
imbue them with magic and do all this stuff, and he's a tinkerer, and I'm like, Geppetto. So we have Geppetto. He is one of the key NPCs, and if you have Geppetto, you probably have Pinocchio. Now, the form in which that takes, I feel, is unique. Now, you have seen the art, whether you
Yes.
knew you did or not,
Yep.
and so we have shown that art on the past campaign. But Geppetto is based primarily in sort of a hobgoblin aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
There are also goblins. Again, as a base, we have changed them a bit, but
Yep.
just for you to kind of paint the picture in your mind's eye. So Geppetto would be larger hobgoblin, and then he would create certain things that maybe have a more goblin-like aesthetic, and then there are also a more goblin-like creature among their clan. And then there's also a species of native Neverlandians that are based very much in like a gnome type aesthetic. And
Yep.
that's very much pulled from Peter Pan itself. Peter
Yep.
Pan has a really great passage where it sort of lists what you find in Neverland, and it's just the most random collection of things. And it's so incredible and so rich, and you're just like, and it's silly and it's quirky and whatever, and one of them is gnome tailors. Our gnomes are not necessarily tailors, but again, sort of that fabrication, right, that sense of building, and then again trying to find ways to build that just sort of built-in conflict.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so, we would have sort of these potentially competing species in a region. The caverns, additionally, serve another purpose, which is providing one of the methods of getting your party from A to B
Yeah.
in a reasonable amount of time.
Yep.
Because, however, we have these species down there, this will not be an easy task to accomplish.
Nope.
So, as the DM, whether it is a nice, juicy side quest to ingratiate you to somebody to grant you access, or if it is, a stealthy maneuvering to access, or if it's just ground and pound and kick it down, like the world is yours. And we will definitely provide ample opportunities for you guys to do that. But the caverns represented here on the map by highlighting the outer sides, and then you see kind of that hole in the side of the island.
Yeah.
I definitely, that is a thing that lives on in my mind slash in the page that I will not disclose here because it's a super cool thing, I think. But
Love it.
in addition to providing you with additional locations, additional creatures, and additional things, also too, like, what else would you find? Right, think caverns. Right, we're gonna have some cool bat-like things and all these other, creepy blind salamander things and just all kinds of stuff. And oh, as a sort of teaser, right? Neverland, between the bats and the Neverbirds and all that kind of stuff, right? Neverland is a place where people expect to be able to fly.
Mm-hmm.
We will talk about that in the weeks to come.
Yes, we will.
But as we think about the caverns and their bat-like creatures, and we didn't talk about the Neverbird, but there are all these other animals, right? Where things, more things can fly than maybe you would think. And additionally, there are methods for NPCs and players to fly. And so, again, lots of really cool ways that you can bring these pages to life and incorporate them into your game and, and achieve the stuff that you want to achieve.
Yep.
So, what did we not? We talked about pretty much everything there. The one thing I'll say, so obviously a very Italian inspired book, but I think I'm leaning a bit more Germanic so far in my build. Um, there's something about Geppetto. I haven't seen the cartoons recently enough to really know, but like when I just picture right like those Germany houses with like I don't mean Germany like I meant like German E and I just said the word.
Yep.
So those German style how with like the crossbars and the dark browns and that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
like almost like a very gingerbread kind of style.
Yeah, gingerbready, alpine, right?
Yep.
Like some
Yep.
kind of that kind of style. And I think that bridges the gap, between Germany and Italy, and you've got the Alps and that kind of stuff shared there, even with France, right? I think French Alps are a thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
We're American. We don't do geography, but I think I've got that right. And so, the so that look feels like it bridges, but sort of that Germanic folklore and stuff blending into it was much more interesting to me. The Germans are pretty good at creating some creepy stuff, and so that gives a lot of play there. And anyways, it's kind of what you can expect out of these characters.
So, just to bring it all home, I'm going to ask you a quick question as we wrap this up.
Yeah,
And it's probably like asking you to pick between your children.
I
But,
can do that.
well, yeah, I know you can actually. Um,
I'm kidding.
um, as of now, what region are you most excited about
Woo! As of right now,
as of right now?
I would say the region I'm the most excited about is Sherwood Forest.
Ooh, okay. Okay.
The reason I will say that is because I feel like Sherwood has a really interesting diversity in what you find there in terms of NPCs and that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Um, and I feel like I lived in Neverwood and the Neverplains for so long in the early
sure.
development stages
Yep.
that kind of like just lives on autoplay a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
And where my brain has just been like in its current high creative state
Yep.
has been Sherwood Forest as a conduit also to connecting some of these other areas.
I
So,
think it's
what
I
about
kind
you?
of we're talking about Sherwood. I was kind of thinking about it in, you touched on the fact that it's a newer region, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not part of that OG established, and I think maybe the lack of physical and relational divide that will be kind of in Sherwood up to Finnmark um, is intriguing, right? I don't think like you mentioned, it's not going to be as defined as say the Neverwood and the Neverplains against the backdrop of maybe Keelhaul and things like that. Like there's a little bit more fluidity to those environments, and I think that's going to be fun. So yeah, I mean we haven't delved as like you said as much into those, so I'm excited to really get in and get dirty with those and figure out some of those tissues more for sure.
100%. And I think it mirrors nicely, right? Like we talked about with coral caves and the abyss, kind of two biomes that play together. And so Sherwood mirrors that on land, right? So you've got Sherwood and Finnmark. The boreal forest leads perfectly into the tundral plain and into the mountainous region. And so that feels natural and modern, I
Yep.
guess, right? Like maybe kids would have dreamt that better. Exactly right. Whereas the rest of Neverland might look a little segmented, but it all makes sense. But
Yeah.
yes, and I think that's true. Like it's less of a this is this and this is this, and it's much more of a blend. It's a gradient,
Yeah.
and so the storylines merge a lot more intensely, I think.
Yeah,
Whereas a lot of the through lines in the older regions of Neverland are very, like tribal combat, like you don't come here and I don't go there.
yeah,
And this is a lot more organic, and so those conflicts and stuff happen a little bit more organically, and that's just really fun to
yeah.
play.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. I love it. I love it.
Dude, that's a banger question. Way to end us out on a real high, bro.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you're welcome, guys. We were aiming for a much tighter show tonight, so we kept it to about an hour and a half. And dude, one day we'll get there, man.
We'll
I
get there.
just I just get so excited to talk about this
These
stuff.
are the heavy topics for now. We'll tackle some lighter things. We still gotta bring Joe in to get some more of that D&D sweet D&D mechanic stuff going on.
Sweet
Again, as
D go.
much as he's willing to let us share. But yeah, I mean, this is just, again, we could talk forever about this, but just giving a little bit more about what is behind all of this. And, this is not off the top of the head. This is well researched and well established, and only to get more so. So
It's a little off the top of the head, but that happened years ago. All right, bro. Thanks for joining me yet again.
love it. Always, always.
Um, And guys, thank you for watching. Whether you're watching live or watching later, we're happy you're here, and we hope that you're finding the information interesting, and maybe better yet, exciting. And like I said before, if there is anything that you want to hear about or learn more about, or something you want us to focus on for an episode or whatever, ask away. We're happy to answer your questions if it's as simple as that.
Yep.
And it's, if you don't want us to like read your question or say anything, like we could just answer you through where you send it. Just say that, like, hey, I don't want it on air, but what about this?
Yep.
And then, but yeah, if you have stuff you want to hear about, just let us know. We can answer it quick, or we can do an episode, whatever it takes. Happy to do it, and we're here for you guys. So
Yep.
thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week, barring some catastrophe.
It always happens.
It can always happen. All right, guys. I'm Kiko, and this is.
Peace.
Did you say your name?
Did say my name.
I didn't hear it. Say it again.
Yeah.
I'm Kiko. That's Tim, and we will see you on the next.